Okay, Kulkarni Nation, we're live with Darshan Kulkarni again. Man, this is like, you know, you only come on when like chaos is around,
That's right.
And right
And
now we're
when I'm
just
with Dan Sfera, chaos is always around.
well, this is true, but right now it's around all of us as well.
Yes.
And people want advice, help, although this is not legal advice.
That's right.
People said they appreciate the clarity.
Oh, do they?
From our talks and even with Chris and Robert and Monica. So to start with this, we're gonna get into drug prices soon.
That's yesterday's conversation. Yep.
That's yesterday. So we're gonna get into a couple
Tariffs.
things. Tariffs. I wanted to start with the tariffs, by the way. So Monica, this is what I wanted to get at yesterday. Monica had this theory, and it actually was like, okay, well, it's interesting if it pans out. Her theory was the silver lining in this whole tariff thing, and as it affects R&D, will be the FDA will be flexible to the administration's initiatives to mandate more U.S. trials versus, you know how they allow a lot of studies to be done overseas, like in the preferred countries or whatever that list is called.
Sure.
Equivalent countries. She's saying she believes the FDA is going to pivot to where they slowly start encouraging pharma to do more of those studies in the U.S. as opposed to abroad. That's her silver lining on the tariff.
Well, how did she get there?
She got there through infrastructure, basically. So that's where it relates to blockchain. And
I don't know what I mean. You're using the word infrastructure, but how do you mean?
Infrastructure when it comes to manufacturing and things like that.
Okay.
So basically onshoring, but onshoring the trials as well.
But why I follow the onshoring part. Why does she think it extends to trials?
She thinks that's going to be the FDA's way of nudging pharma to start thinking about US first. Since they are what is administration friendly agency now. I mean, didn't Trump appoint the new FDA head, and then HHS, that's RFK, as you know.
Sure.
That's her theory. I mean, it's just a theory.
I mean, to me, at this second, purely based on what you're telling me, it sounds more like her hope.
Well, sure, hopes and theories. I mean, now you're getting into philosophy, but
no. What I mean more is like, did she have like a logic where she said he said this, so that means this leads to this leads to this?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it's just a theory. It's like maybe a wild theory, or her trying to see the silver lining in everything. But she thinks the agency will be
that's very Monica.
Amenable to encouraging more onshoring. Not just on the manufacturing side and the supply side, but also the R&D side.
In fact, I would go the other way around.
Yeah, we need a good counter argument. That's why I brought you in.
The counter argument is you're trying to drop the cost of drugs. By definition, you're going to be able to drop the cost of drugs by doing the studies in non-US countries. So to prioritize US trials when they will by definition just be more expensive would be counterintuitive. Especially if you can get the same. Now, I don't think ever, like I think there was a situation several years ago where someone tried to do all of their studies in China, if I remember correctly. Well, and they said that doesn't work because we don't know if they represent the US population.
Right. Can we just start with that? Maybe we both agree China is not an emerging market anymore for R&D. At least from the US.
No, they're a competitor at this point. They're a pretty strong competitor.
Right. At least from the US side, China, that whole let's do our studies in China is gone. That ship has sailed.
But they'll still happen. Because I think
they'll still do studies there, but not US companies.
They will. Absolutely they will.
Still?
Yeah, because you're still aiming to sell in the Chinese market.
And then the European market, which probably they'll remain friendly, or I mean, all this remains to be seen, honestly. Like the bigger macro theory is Trump is doing this to isolate everyone from China.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a fair argument that he wants to. I think what his position is that there's a trade deficit, which means that we as a country in the US have lost Love that your dog left. We as a country have lost manufacturing capabilities, and it became a really big acute problem during COVID, for example. So he wants to onshore that, and the way you onshore that is by trying to bring as much of it back to the U.S. as possible, solidify your supply chains. I think the other issue that's popped up is probably the fact that China is problematic from a IP perspective, and China itself will concede that point.
Well, at least they're conceding it now.
I mean, it's come up in two different ways. One is, I'm sure everyone's seen this,
right? Wuxi.
Wuxi AppTech was, you're thinking of the U.S. Biosecure Act when we say that, but that was before all of this. I'm thinking about the fact that they have always pushed back. Well, the way Chinese investment works is it has to be in China. So they came out and essentially they said that we essentially own the IP. We get to work with the IP. We get to control the IP. And they're now pretty significant players in the pharma biotech world. The second element that came out of that was there's been a series of hacking that has happened, which means that they were going to non-Chinese servers. They were getting confidential US data off of those servers. And again, they were accessing that information as well. The result of it being that China is now a serious competitor in the health and the health IT world to the US.
And in a lot of other industries.
Balance that out. Yeah, I mean, for sure, in other industries as well. So I don't blame Trump for trying to bring it back. But I think that you have other issues that Trump is ignoring. For example, some things are just better out. Like, it's like trying to import snow from Sudan. Like, you can't adjust that trade deficit. Right. Sudan doesn't produce enough snow. So you're going to have to bring it from somewhere else. Like, I don't know, freaking Alaska, Canada, wherever the hell it is. So you can only adjust so much. And there's a reason global supply chains work well. So we need to keep that in mind.
So you think Monica's theory is wishful thinking?
At this moment, I mean, unless she had something more that I hadn't thought of. But yeah.
Yeah, it was just her hypothesis on what she thinks the FDA might do.
Yeah. I think the FDA is looking at higher priorities.
Since they're administration friendly.
But administration friendly, to them, really the focus is going to end up being in two different areas. I think RFK has already said he wants to focus on food, and I think he wants to drop the
and environmental toxins.
Yeah. At least in the context of environmental toxins, I understand that he was a lawyer working in that space. So I'll give him that part.
Time, like 40 years of litigation.
So, which is why I'll concede, like, to me, at least you have some knowledge in that space.
Well, I think he came out. Did you see his 9-minute speech yesterday on
I heard
C-SPAN?
Yeah, it was not a smart speech, but that's a different discussion.
No, but he did not single out vaccines like everyone.
That's not even the point. I'm talking about something different. To me, I think he wants to drop the cost of what's the word I'm looking for? Production and risk. And he's like, well, how can we bring products to market faster? And I'm a big fan of bringing products to market faster. I'm not a big fan of bringing products to market faster by lowering the risk thresholds.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to end up facing. And that's what concerns everyone. Like, he apparently he went into a whole thing about like conspiracy theories and stuff, which, again, to be fair, I have not watched the video.
Yeah, I watched it. He got into, like, so the surprising part to me, and he's been labeled this anti-vax, which it's actually way more nuanced than that. He's said, don't ignore the toxins, don't ignore the red, green, blue on the smart TVs. You know, those things are all played a factor in the rising rates of autism. Said something like 1 in 20 kids.
What qualifies him to make that opinion?
I guess he's looked at data and
dude, come on.
People have been telling him.
Come on.
Shouldn't they be looked at if autism's increasing that?
But they have looked at all this stuff and they've said no, and now he's going, I don't like the answer, so let's do it again. It
makes you think. I mean,
it doesn't make me think at all.
His critics say he's anti-vax, and
I don't know about him being anti-vax. If you have data to back it up, that's cool.
Sure. Sure.
I don't see. I look at every issue on its own, and I don't care if you have any position. If you have any answers that we don't have before, fine. Let's respect that and let's explore that. But just to come up with a cockamamie theory on, red, blue, green light. Okay,
on smart
why?
TVs, yeah.
What
On
about
smart TVs, environmental toxins such as ester generators in the water.
What has that got to do with vaccines, though?
Nothing. That's my point. That's my point. He's the anchor is autism rates are increasing.
But why? What qualifies him to speak to autism rates based on toxins in the water?
Data that he's looked at. There's people sending him stuff.
Dude, come on. If I can throw have you ever spoken to a conspiracy theorist before?
Of course. I used to read those books like religiously in college.
Those guys are crazy.
Yes.
And what you're describing to me is, and I'm purely going off of what you're telling me. I've only had one experience with a conspiracy theorist, and it was like the most eye-opening. Holy shit!
Well, there's a spectrum of conspiracy theorists. They're not all in the same place.
No, okay, I've only met one, like I said. So
there's the wacky ones.
Okay.
Then there's also the philosophical ones, like we live in the Matrix. Then there are there's some truth here, but if you remove the other statements, I can maybe see that. And then you start getting more into the neutral and kind of the anti-establishment narrative.
Sure. So I don't have an issue with, for example, the metaphysical ones you were talking about. Like, do we live in the Matrix? Sure. I actually kind of believe that one. But
you're a conspiracy theorist.
I could be.
But half a century ago, you would be
no. Let's be very clear. If that's my position, I should not be in charge of NASA to go find me where
Why not though? If you're super smart as well and you accomplish.
No, I'm not super smart enough to be able to go. Let's redirect all of NASA's budget to focus on my crazy crackpot theories. But that's what he's doing right now. That's my concern.
And then Helen says, so Helen, she was Monica. Sorry about that. We're going to get to LinkedIn users' long Kindle book thing here soon. No data to support that, and it contradicts CDC's finding. Yeah, and autism rates are increasing. Diagnostic methods and awareness is better. For sure. For sure that's the case. But he actually addressed that in his speech yesterday. People should go watch the 9-minute speech only because it doesn't mean I agree with all of it. He's been labeled as this anti-vax, and he's actually not. Like, that vaccines came up like for a minute.
But ignore the vaccine part. To me, it's the autism part that I have an issue with.
Well, so you don't think
people to opine on it?
Well, who should then?
I would think someone qualified.
Do you think the director of HHS should look at autism or ignore it if they're increasing?
Is that the highest priority of things we should be focusing on right now, considering we've got...
No, but it's important to him and people that support him.
But this is not a political position.
No, but he promised he's going to do that when he was running for president. And
yeah, but he's not running for president.
Right. But his supporters came over to Trump. The argument is Trump won because RFK had some supporters on his side too, that otherwise would not have gone Trump.
I'm trying to understand Helen's comment. Yeah,
Helen says you're right.
He's
not qualified to opine.
I don't know what the he is and right. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, he is and right. You are right.
Oh, I am? Okay.
And he's a crackpot. Well, my answers to that is fair, but who should? And the thing is, nobody's looking at it.
No, but there are literally doctors, pediatricians, scientists whose entire job and careers have been looking at this.
You're right. Like we've done autism studies too. I know I've worked with these people.
Some guy with a theory based on nothing is like, I read something that some guy sent to me. Like, no, I'm sorry, you're not qualified.
It's based on correlating factors that are being confounded.
That's literally the definition of conspiracy theory.
Yeah. Causational. Correlation versus causation. We got to separate the two.
And I'm not even sure it's correlated. It's literally like, I saw a connection.
Yeah. And Helen said he's anti-vax, and
to me, I don't even care. Like, you can have any position you want as long as you can back it up.
You can back it up. Well, so on the environmental toxins, he is expert on that.
Which is why I didn't argue about environmental toxins. I was like, you know what? He's done effort
But
there.
he argues some of that has to do with autism as well.
Again, see that jump is where I have an issue. I have no issue with you going, it causes harm. Absolutely. There might be a ton of data. He's probably looked at that data. So I can respect that. But to go, it causes autism when there's a shit ton of data saying no, and you going, I read a case study. Like, dude, that's crazy.
Yeah, and there's all these overprotective parents keep screen time away from the kids.
And let's be clear, we also have, this is not just a pick on RFK thing. This is also those crazy liberal ladies prior to all of this thing started, where you had the granola moms or whatever they were. They were doing the same exact thing. They were anti-vax at one point. This is like
yeah.
In the dark days, if you will.
Angelina Jolie, I believe.
To me, it doesn't matter where you come from. Yeah. You're not qualified to opine on it. So I don't care what the topic is. If you're qualified, teach me. If you're not, shut the fuck up. So yeah.
If you're qualified, well, if you've been personally affected by it, and
that doesn't qualify you. I'm sorry. You know how to deal with it, absolutely, without a doubt.
Crunchy moms. I never heard of this, but I know this used to be like a left-leaning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And let's get into 99 cents for this Kindle.
Actually, that's not true, though. It's significantly more advanced. No, put that back on for a second.
Oh, no.
I was surprised by this because I thought so, too.
Pharma R&D tech is significantly more advanced in the U.S.
That's not true anymore.
Yeah, I disagree as well, especially in areas like niche, specialty, and rare disease.
No, biologics, China is like right up there.
Further, China, you can argue, because they steal everything.
Well, exactly. That's fair, but the fact is that they're qualified now.
Yeah, they're qualified.
Whether or not how they got there is irrelevant.
As well as for NMEs. What's NME?
New molecular entities.
Which demand robust and highly specialized logistics, cold chain systems. Asia has this. While most heroes operate globally in the U.S.,
this is coming from a place of like China is incredibly well qualified to handle a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, but so is Japan,
absolutely,
South Korea,
absolutely.
Certain like majority of Europe, which is not cheaper than the U.S.
Western Europe. I haven't been to Eastern Europe.
Eastern Europe's getting the Eastern Europe's like Mexico. They're getting their infrastructure down.
Eastern Europe's like India, Mexico. They're still developing.
India's coming up.
Dude, India has its own issues. Like I can say that as someone who's very deeply entrenched in that space.
You want to opine on that real quick?
Which part?
India.
About what though?
In context to Trump's macro game theory seems to be, he's not saying it, and you can argue, well, that's on purpose because he's in the middle of a war.
Sure.
He's trying to isolate the world from China, and one of the most important allies of ours is India. It's supposed to be India.
It's more of an enemy of my enemy is my friend.
India's never been our enemy or hostile to us.
Actually, it has.
They've always been our outsourcing hub for
no.
telecoms.
No. So there was the India-Pakistan war in the 1960s. One of the reasons India is not so. I grew up in India, so I have a fair amount of experience. India has what's called the non-aligned movement. So while you had the U.S. faction and the USSR faction that they were going against each other, both countries were coming to India saying, join our faction. And India originally was very, very pro-US, but then there was a war between India and Pakistan. And the Americans said, we basically support Pakistan. And India said, what the hell? But at that point, USSR came and supported India. Now, again, let's be clear, that's still a proxy war. But that's when India kind of realized we can't be like in the middle of this argument because it's not really it's not in our best interest to just support a faction because they will change sides whenever they want. So in that same way, they remain non-aligned and they go, I'm going to look at every individual situation separately and decide what's best for India. So that's why it's the same approach I take around like being pro-vax, anti-vax, or pro-RFK. It's like, I don't give a shit. I'm going to address each issue and go, this is how I stand on this issue, and here's where I stand on this issue.
I think it's not good to get binary on
Exactly.
paradigms. Like, even if you talk about, like, today, orforglipron, which is the oral GLP-1, came out with excellent phase 3 data.
I thought they canceled that. Isn't that the one they canceled?
No.
That's the oral one?
There's
the Lilly one you're talking about. No,
yeah.
Pfizer shut theirs down.
Sure. Well, Pfizer don't know what they're doing for like 4 decades. But Lilly, I wouldn't own Pfizer stock. Lilly, on the other hand.
Just to be clear, he's not giving stock advice either. This is not
definitely not. I've lost way more money than I've made in this, especially in this industry.
I don't even invest in I try to avoid investing as much as possible.
No, I do, but like when it comes to vax, like that's so like such a stupid argument to me. Like, are you pro-vax? You're anti-vax. When you look at the nuances, well, you should look at each one individually. Same with the GLPs. Who says they're pro or anti-GLP? Well, have you looked at all of them? Like, they all kind of are created for different purposes, do different things. Did you look at the data for all of them? So to say you're pro or anti something is just choosing a side without really thinking about the deeper complexities.
So there's a slight distinction I'd draw, which I think you'd agree with. I think there's something called a class effect. So yes, all GLPs are not the same. However, they have commonalities. In the same way, all vaccines are not the same, but they have commonalities. I would not go pro-vax, anti-vax, and like you said, I'd still evaluate each thing. But the truth is, in the end, they all have commonality. So if your concern is it mounts an immune response, that's true across all the vaccines. Or even if it doesn't mount an immune response, is your argument, you're going to have some level of immunogenicity resulting from it.
That's also true from the MABs, monoclonal.
It'll include MABs. It'll include basically any protein is going to cause that. And again, if you've got PhDs on here, feel free to correct me. It's been 10 years since I've been a pharmacist. So
those PhDs, you let them loose, they'll get loose.
But they'll be smarter than I am, and that's my point. Just because I remember something, I can see the point that someone's smarter than me in this, and let them tell me what I don't know instead of going, I have this answer now, help me prove it right. That's my concern.
Yeah. I mean, the only argument for the other side is, why do we blindly trust as opposed to verify from others? And when others have been silenced, when other educated people have been silenced,
who's the other educated people?
Peter McCullough, he came on my channel. He's the most published cardiologist ever.
So you know what? But and I'm genuinely asking this question: why do you think a cardiologist is qualified to opine on vaccines?
Because of the heart issues that were happening at the
but has he? And let's be clear, he might be very qualified because he's in the end still a doctor. If he's done the research, I trust him to.
Well, not just any doctor, but this whole argument we're having about you should trust the experts.
Yeah,
is great until you start arguing against the orthodoxy, because we're trusting an expert here.
No, but so that's my point. Did you notice I stopped when I was like, if he's done the research, even though he's not a vaccine expert, I'd be willing to listen to him and go, you know more about medicine than I do.
Right. And Helen said he was fired and lost his credentials. He was fired and lost his credentials.
That's a bit of a problem.
Then you look into why he got fired. I'm just saying, Helen, I don't have my mind made up on this, but to look at it as opposed to just listening to what one side tells you is the
I would also argue, Helen, on the one above that.
Oh, yes.
No, that's not true. That's not even close to true. Simethicone is probably my favorite one. It literally does nothing. As a drug class, or by safest and most effective drug class. Look,
I think for the old school vaccines, but like when you start bringing in new things like mRNA that only been studied for like a decade, as opposed to like
it's a pretty long period of time.
But on what indications, though? It's been studied. It's been tried on cancer and things like that. But where the safety
again, it depends what your concern is, right? If your concern is, does it launch an immune response? You're going to have basically the same reaction. Now, if you're saying that, you can have a really good argument around efficacy. I'd respect that argument.
Sure.
But you're not arguing efficacy. You're arguing safety. You're talking about millions and millions of people. Yeah, you kind of have good safety data at this point.
It depends what you put in the mRNA to code for. I mean, the whole platform, the idea is we can make a vaccine quickly with this technology, right? So it's just, that's the delivery mechanism. It matters what you put into it, what you code it for. So mRNA
what do you mean by the word
studied.
coded for? I guess I'm confused what you mean by that.
So to code for for example, spike protein, or in cancer to code for the antigen receptors for the CAR T, for example.
What about it?
So they can basically use the mRNA as a vehicle to code for whatever they need to. That's the whole argument for. It's like
So what
3D
is that?
printing
What is
for a
I
vaccine.
don't understand. I don't follow you.
The risk profile for a
Mhm.
cancer patient
Mhm.
is much more tolerable than the risk profile for a healthy person. On
Okay,
something
fair
that
enough. I
hasn't
agree
been
with that. Yeah,
studied, on something that hasn't been studied long term.
but it has been studied long term. I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, I guess then the question is like long enough and for whom, and when the
10
question
years
is
is a long
for,
period of time.
sure, and then you
And
start
mRNA has been
getting
around even
into,
longer than that.
well, then you start getting into for what, and
No,
is
but
it
then
still worth it for
that
a
goes to
healthy
efficacy.
volunteer?
That doesn't go to safety. For what is a different question.
Right, of course. For what is efficacy? But
So from
people
a safety
question these
perspective, it's
things.
been addressed. And efficacy, someone's done the analysis. So no one's arguing efficacy right now. You're just arguing safety.
They're arguing safety for the delivery mechanism, but not for anything you want to put in it.
You want to throw it, Helen's next.
If you code a spike protein in there, it has never been studied prior to Operation Warp Speed on humans.
I couldn't
Spike
comment,
protein?
but
You couldn't. It didn't exist. I mean, it existed in the
I
lab in
genuinely don't
Wuhan.
know. You could be right, 100%.
Well,
I
it did
don't know.
exist in China in a lab. You're right. But mRNA was developed for SARS-1. He's not an expert, and he's trying to say the
Who's
vaccine
the
is
he right now?
more dangerous than the disease, which is
Are
flat
you
rot.
talking about RFK? Is that who we're talking about?
Yeah, and McCullough. McCullough was on my show, and I almost
I mean,
lost my
McCullough, I
YouTube
don't know
channel.
McCullough, but to me, the fact that he's a medical doctor, went to medical school, says something. He's at least read enough to be able to be smarter than me.
The most published cardiologist in.
Yeah, dude, publishing, as someone who
I
publishes a
know.
lot,
Yeah,
who gives
it's
a shit?
bullshit. Yeah, I know. It was over 20 years for mRNA. I know. We'll never get over this thing. There's some sides that say inject yourself with everything that comes out, and others that say don't.
And I don't care. Like, I come at it from a different perspective. Like, prove to me that you're right, and I'd be happy to consider anything you put out.
Right. I
But
just think we need critical thinking in society, and
that's
from
fair.
both sides. Blind followers of RFK, anything he says, he'll change his mind, then they go to that.
Right.
And then blind followers of Fauci, same thing.
But you do realize there's a distinction between those two, right?
Yeah, one was put in a position of authority, and
Ignore the authority. No, who gives a shit about the authority?
Well, a lot.
No. That's not the point I'm making. I meant from a spend their life dedicated to this topic perspective. Who would you say is qualified?
Both did. Are you talking about viruses? It's Fauci.
Yeah, that's my point. That's the only point I was making.
Fauci.
So I'm willing to listen to that conversation.
That doesn't mean others shouldn't criticize him when they can, if they have opinions.
You absolutely should, but then you need to have done a decent amount of research that's equivalent to have that argument.
Yeah,
that's my point.
There have been. I mean,
and if there have been, then they're qualified to have that conversation. But it can't be a crackpot going, I have a different theory.
Sure. I mean, I think my whole point is, regardless of what you choose to believe, you should be a critical thinker and look.
That I agree with. Absolutely.
Yeah. Helen says, I can't post the screenshot here that shows the dramatic drop in hospitalization and death rate after the mRNA vaccines. Yes, send me that, Helen. I'm going to look into it. Because somebody wise once told me, look at the funding source and then look at the results. If one doctor told me, if you can prove the funding source, you can prove the results.
Yeah, the problem with that theory, and it's a fair theory to raise, right? It goes to bias. 100% agree with that. Yeah. The problem with that theory is, without the funding source, who that is not benefiting will fund it otherwise. Because I'm not about to fund.
You're not. Yeah, that's the problem.
Right.
And there's a small book written in the 1950s called How to Lie with Statistics. I think everyone should read, regardless of what side of the.
Oh, I think statistics lie all the time. So 100% with that.
The book is awesome. And it was recommended by Bill Gates. He had a blurb on the front.
Again,
I'm just putting that out there because
authority. I respect knowledge.
Yeah, Bill Gates is awesome. Okay, do you want to get into this white end case?
No, I pulled up the
That
actual.
thing was juicy, man.
Well, you want to throw up my screen?
Oh yeah, let's go with your screen first. That
So
white end case thing is crazy. If we have time for it.
that's what it's referring to.
Okay.
So essentially, it's the notice for request for public comments on essentially the tariffs for pharmaceuticals and pharmaceutical ingredients. This came out yesterday. So again,
APIs.
breaking news. That's a really short comment period, by the way. That's unusually short.
Yesterday, meaning for April 16th, 2020.
April 16th. Oh, this is live, so I figured yesterday is yesterday. But this must be received by May 7th. They're asking for comments on the following: the current and projected demand for pharmaceuticals and ingredients in the U.S., the extent to which domestic production can meet domestic demand.
And this was a huge issue during COVID, if people remember.
Absolutely. Good morning, LinkedIn user.
Identify yourself.
Then the concentration of U.S. imports of pharma and ingredients from a small number of suppliers. To me, see, I think discovering and getting data on all of this is great. I think that's a good call to make overall. Mm-hmm. The concentration of imports of these ingredients from small number of suppliers. I don't know what the word small means. Like, is it 10 and is your concern that they're small? Maybe, but how many more do you need?
Maybe the concern was they're concentrated in all from similar countries.
But that's a different discussion.
Right.
The issue was small. That's what I had a question about.
The overall issue during COVID, I remember, and everyone, this was bipartisan agreement. Yeah. We are overly reliant on this global supply chain during times of crisis.
Agreed. So I wasn't arguing. That's why I wasn't arguing with that discussion at all. Mm. I think that became really relevant because countries could stop production. The impact of foreign government subsidies and predatory trade practices, which is going to the tariffs that Trump's concerned about. The economic demand impact of artificially suppressed prices. I don't know if that's true.
What up, Kelvin? Yeah, that's the argument is
I can't tell whether he means in the US or outside the US.
Well, anything Trump writes is that's someone suffering is in the US. I think that's just a general rule.
Repeat that for me again.
Anything that this administration addresses where someone is struggling, it's US. Like 90% of the time.
Oh, you think?
Because the whole platform is US first. Bring things here. They're not going to focus on problems of other countries.
No, that's not what I meant, because there are two different types of problems, right? There are two different audiences. So one audience could be manufacturers who are trying to sell their product, for example, in China, and the prices are suppressed.
Yeah.
That's one argument. The flip side is you're trying to buy the product in the US and there's suppressed prices because other countries are, what was the word I'm looking for? Subsidizing the pharmaceuticals or capping. So I don't know what he means by that.
Well, the economic impact would be
it's pretty broad
to the US. The negative economic impact.
Both of those would fall into that.
Sure. The detrimental economic impact of artificially suppressed prices of pharmaceuticals. He's talking about Ozempic and things like that because he's pointed. My guess, because he's pointed to that as Exhibit A for many times.
So you're talking about price to consumers.
Ultimately, yeah, and I think that's what he's talking about.
No, but it's also very easy if you look at the economic impact on manufacturers in the U.S. We're trying to sell their product outside because they suppress prices.
Yeah.
So it's very possible that.
And it's crazy how many biotechs, aka the majority, at some point, maybe all of them, get their APIs from overseas.
So biotechs wouldn't get APIs. That's not a thing. Small molecules have API.
Small molecules, like the one I'm invested in, for example. Ultimately, it boils down to epinephrine, right? And they have their own in-house manufacturing, but the actual API of epinephrine, I've looked into it. Well, the community has, and there's 3 places 2 are overseas, and 1 is in Iowa somewhere.
Think of it this way. What we think of as traditional manufacturing is literally a kitchen. You still have to buy the ingredients from somewhere else. So all you're doing is mixing things together in most cases. So the question is, do I care? And it's fair to say I do care. Do I care if the ingredient is made in China as long as I'm mixing it in the US? Because I know how to mix these things together.
Yeah.
So yeah. The potential for go ahead.
Do you think this is remember that book I was texting you about this weekend?
Which one?
Fukuyami.
Dude, I don't remember jack shit.
About the Darshan and I text all the time.
Yeah,
but,
I get
the book that basically paved the way for globalization, like, and how he made the statement, a globalized democracy is the epitome of a completely outsourced globalized democracy with unfettered free trade is complete open border, unfettered free trade, and the third one, Pax Americana. That's like the epitome of democracy. And I think MAGA is turning that on its head and saying, no, we're actually going to reverse some of that stuff. And this whole executive order is one proof of that.
I'm not. Here's the thing. I think that somewhere along the line, the position is that we landed up being less manufacturers and more users. And that's not best for America, is the current position that the administration is taking. And that's a position. I'm not sure I agree or disagree because I just simply don't know enough about that.
Yeah.
What's unclear to me is the disruptive impact of this. And what I mean by that is there will be a short to medium term impact.
You see, the stocks are all red. Definitely a short term. Definitely, yeah, exactly. Hopefully.
The question is there a long-term impact?
Yeah. I mean, Lilly's up 12%, so it shows that good results are still good results in the midst of a bloodbath.
Well, I don't know, up 12% compared to what?
No, today, up 12% today, while everything else is red. So that, to me, that shows good results are good results. Good.
To clarify, I have Lilly stock, so if the SEC is looking,
we do too, but so does half the people watching probably.
No, you still have to disclose it. So
yeah, I do. It's in my retirement, so you'll see it when I have a gray beard. I'll be able to get it out. Grayer beard. So yeah, your opinion, man. Do you think this is good for us to be reliant, us being the U.S.?
I look at Helen's comment, for example. If I look at the number of recalls of important meds in recent years, I have less of an issue with this. I don't think the fact that I don't think the recalls are necessarily going to change just because they're in the U.S. or outside the U.S. I think that your cost will change. I think your supply chain will change, but I'm not convinced that there are more recalls just because they're outside the U.S. So we'll see.
What if the flip side of this tariff thing, right? This is like what Trump's doing is hostile towards whoever he's imposing tariffs on. He would say
that's literally the whole world.
Yeah, he would say it's retribution for.
I think Kelvin's hitting on you, by the way.
You look great with great, no worries. Oh, thank you. It's like that TikTok live streamer. Oh, thank you.
Heart.
We all love each other. I forgot what I was gonna say. Fuck, Calvin. Oh, the same way. It's a double-edged sword, man. If we can impose tariffs on other countries, what would make China or wherever these APIs are coming from not reverse it and say, all right, we're just not going to export any more APIs?
You're saying that for rare earths, for example, they just said we're not going to do it.
Right. So how much longer are we going to be okay with not figuring out how to how to be less dependent on China?
Well, the question is, if we wouldn't have done this, we'd never have to have worried about that question.
Right. But if people weren't asleep at the wheel, and so this relates to our very first opening segment.
Okay.
With let the experts opine. Most
absolutely.
people in the 80s, 90s didn't care. Hey, the experts are dealing with this globalization stuff.
Yeah.
I don't have a PhD in economics. I have no idea what free trade is.
So I think
So
free trade is more of a business discussion. So to me, as much as I'm not completely convinced about what he's doing,
yeah,
I have less of an issue with him commenting on it because it's a business deal. And
sure. But the point is, if
yeah,
everybody takes that argument
okay,
of apathy, right? Just
okay,
let the experts
sure,
handle it. Well, if
sure.
the experts start doing their own thing, making money off of it, they're basically mortgaging the long-term security of the country's best interests for their short-term gains.
No, but you can always incentivize that, and incentives, for example, have the U.S. Biosecure Act is an example of that, where you
But
say
that
no,
just
we're
came
not
out
going to.
last year. That
No, but
came
that's
out.
just an example.
Okay.
There are dozens of acts like this.
But is that not
Um,
risk of apathy?
no, but it's not apathy is the point I'm making. I think that there are certain things that we're saying as a industry or as a country where we say this is too important to be allowed to be sold somewhere else. So, for example,
Right.
the plans to make a MiG, whatever, I don't really know what kind of planes they are,
Oh
but
man, there's a book. I read a book on that. That
good
shit's
for you.
scary. That shit's
Uh,
scary, man.
but my point is, you don't share those schematics
Right. Right.
because you go, that is important and it's important to national defense.
Yep.
You could, in the same way, say that we want certain things to be made here because of the interest of national defense. 100% with you. The question, though, is if you start throwing everything into national defense, then that becomes a little bit meaningless. And that's part of the argument against the executive orders, because right now everything that should be a law is coming out as an executive order, and one might argue that's too far.
Well, this whole
Congress should
Trump
be passing.
administration, Section 232,
Yeah.
investigations on pharmaceuticals and semiconductors.
Yeah.
So you just said not everything, but these are two verticals that
That's why,
are.
have you noticed I'm not arguing against or for it? I'm kind of going, these are worth thinking about.
No, yeah, of course,
He's
of
in a
course.
better position than I am to talk about what actually affects national security. So I'm not going to sit and question a guy, the president of the United States, who has access to more data than I do.
Of course, of course.
So yeah,
I just think the complacency of let the experts deal with it could be dangerous as well.
at a certain point, yes, but I don't think we're anywhere close to that point.
Well, not now. The scales have tipped now to the other side, but in the past, like the last 40 years, that's been basically the.
But it's worked really well for the most part for the last 40 years.
Yeah, but the cracks started to show around COVID, and
yeah, but it literally took a world crisis, and then things returned back to normal almost immediately. And now we're saying, let's look at those cracks. Like, you know what? Sometimes picking at a scab is not really what you need to do.
Or they say, whoa, we got lucky. We dodged a bullet there, even though, hundreds of thousands of people. Well, those data you can't trust either, honestly. But a lot of people died. Sure. I knew a few that passed away. I'm sure most people did.
Do you want to share the screen for a couple more minutes? Just so,
yeah.
Let's finish this out.
Yeah, this Article 232, I don't think we're going to get to it.
This is Article 232. This is
okay.
That's what this was referencing.
Okay, I'm looking at an opinion piece on it. Okay. There's a very good opinion piece on it by some law firm. I think they're your rivals, I believe. Do we name them?
Sure, if you want. They're not my rivals. They're maybe bigger than me.
White and Case.
White and Case.
Very nice name.
But if you look back at this, you're talking about, here's the part you care about, the feasibility of increasing domestic capacity for pharmaceuticals. That to me is the point we're all discussing right now. Yes, reducing import reliance is a good thing, but what is the feasibility of doing it in any kind of serious way quickly? I think those are the questions we don't know the answers to. I'm not qualified. I think from what I remember, it takes years. Actually, I am relatively qualified to talk on this. Okay. Because my dad created a pharmaceutical company before, so I know what.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. We used to make that in India, and it took years. And I'm talking like a small pharmaceutical company. When you're talking about global supply chains and stuff, it is hard as nails. And then there is the impact of current trade policies on domestic production and whether additional measures, including tariffs or quotas. That's an interesting angle. It's not just tariffs, but also quotas are necessary to protect national security. And to me, that is a discussion he's qualified to have because he has access to data that speaks to, you know what, we want something to be made here.
But he's
and
not
other relevant
qualified.
factors.
He's not qualified on other
Yeah, I mean,
topics.
there's certain, and that's my point. There are things that people are qualified to do, and they should absolutely be talking about that. And
So
then there are
Biden
things
was
you aren't.
qualified for which ones? Just to recall.
Well, I think this exact same thing, Biden was just as qualified.
Which one? A
Uh,
lifetime legislator.
no, my point is he had access to this data to decide whether it's a security risk or not.
He was definitely qualified to opine on matters of U.S. Sino relations.
Sure.
Getting
You're talking about Biden, his son's laptop. I'm with you.
Yeah, and being a contractor, a de facto contractor for that. I mean,
I quite honestly does not.
I'm ready to read the white papers from him on his opinion on this. Point is, anything can be turned against the person.
I don't know if it's convincing is the point, but
it's very convincing.
But my point is, in the end, it all comes. I think we're kind of done with that. Everything else is sort of. Well, if you want to comment on any of this opinion by what was it, May 7th?
Yeah, I haven't put up out of respect to you, I haven't put up the white end case.
Well, this is the actual one. So if you want to put up white end case, that's fine. But you can. This is what they're referring to.
I'll put the link underneath.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but what they're just doing more of an opinion piece on it.
They're trying to add some more clarity to what this is. So put up both, dude.
And they actually, they're doing really good here. Let me put this up. So they, StreamYard changed how you share a screen. Here we go. Can you see it?
Yeah.
So look what they've done here.
Yeah, they did the analysis, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and then we provide a list of partners and senior attorneys with global international trade practice of white and case. I mean, look at this. Mexico, Brussels, Paris. Yeah. Wow, they got everything.
If you look at the first link.
Washington?
Lower. It has the number 1 next to it.
Oh, notice of request for public comments.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at right now.
I gotcha. Okay. I'll just throw this in the ChatGPT and have it spit out an opinion for me.
There you go.
No, this is, I mean, the news never ends these days, and whether that's for the better or for the worse. Currently, it's bad.
It's chaos.
It's chaos, yeah. Do you think we get out of this somehow?
Get out of it?
How does this movie end?
There will be some level of tariffs. There will be some significant amount of onshoring. There will be price caps of some kind. Yeah.
How does it end for you and me and the viewers right now?
In terms of clinical research?
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to impact us in any significant way. Outside, we're going to end up paying a lot of money just because we're part of the country.
Okay.
But I don't think it's a direct impact on clinical research. Not right now, at least not based on what he's shared so far.
Quite the opposite of fear porn.
I know. Baba Yaga did not deliver today.
Baba Yaga, no, you did. You always deliver. Baba Yaga always delivers. Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else you didn't get off your chest? Or
No. I think we've had 3 different conversations in the last 3 days. So I think I may
after dark yesterday, today.
Yeah.
Come out with a couple articles.
Love it.
All right. Subscribe, comment, share. Go follow Darshan right now.
Thank you.
Let's get him quality subscribers, not these anti-dog people. The hell is wrong with these guys out there? Subscribe to my channel too. Thank you.
That's right. I'm sharing on my channel, so subscribe.